Hi, DZ Movies here. Today I'm going to explain a drama romance sci-fi film called The Discovery. Incoming spoilers. At the beginning of the film, we see Professor Thomas Harbour being interviewed. He has recently proven the existence of life after death. The interviewer claims that his discovery was dangerous because ever since his work was published, the suicide rate has been increasing enormously. He dismisses the claim by saying that such a crucial truth about human life had to be brought to the people regardless of its consequences. Thomas has been able to capture brain wavelength on a subatomic level, leaving a person's body when they die. This explains that a person's consciousness goes somewhere when they die. But the interviewer insists that since they do not know where consciousness goes, they cannot tell for sure if the afterlife exists. Thomas tackles the claim by saying that when a train leaves the station, we know it is going somewhere. She then brings up that many celebrities, athletes and hundreds of civilians have ended their lives because of the professor and asks him if he feels responsible for their deaths. Thomas simply answers that he doesn't. Just then, one of the camera crew stands before Thomas and thanks him for the fresh start. He shoots himself dead right after. In a similar way, people have been committing mass suicide to restart a new life in the afterlife. It is now the second anniversary of the discovery. Thomas's son, Will Harbour, is traveling on a ferry listening to a TV program talking about his father's discovery and how the man on the set killed himself in front of everyone. He is not proud of his father's work. A girl from the other seat tells her that she was watching the TV. They start to have a conversation then, and it is seen that they are the only ones on the ferry. She introduces herself as Isla and Will comments that her face looks familiar. The two then start to talk about how they think a lot of suicides are going to happen that day because it is the second anniversary of the day that the afterlife was made known to the public. Isla is a supporter of the discovery, but she doesn't seem to like mass suicides. As a response, Isla claims that the discovery gives people a way to get relief from their sufferings in life, but Will stays adamant about his view, saying that although it is proven, it is still a fantasy for him. After they get off the ferry, Isla is trying to hitchhike, waiting for someone to notice them. Will shares with her that when he was 5 he had an accident and was dead for a minute, and when he was resurrected he assured her that he had kind of a dream, flashes, and a little kid and felt stranded on an empty beach. He is sure he invented it, because people always look for a meaning. Isla, annoyed by him, gets a lift, and while getting into the car, he assures her she looks like Isla, but in reality he doesn't know anyone with that name. His brother Toby comes to pick him up and drive to a huge mansion bought by their father. On the way, he sees another funeral and Toby highlights how he is sick of them. Thomas has built his new station in the mansion and has employed people who survived attempted suicides. They also needed more space to conduct their father's new experiment. He will then meet his father, who is being killed in the experiment he is working on for 10 or 15 seconds and then resurrected. Will is annoyed by it and states that his dad built a cult, but Thomas responds that it is a distinction in clearance. Will finally talks to his dad and bluntly asks him to stop all of this. He wants Thomas to tell the media that his discovery was false and stop the chain of mass suicides. Thomas laughs at his idea and claims that his discovery is true and he did not lie to anyone. As it turns out, as he takes out a letter that Will apparently wrote, in the letter, he claimed that his belief was that consciousness should be considered as another state of matter. He, in reality, was the inspiration for the experiment because of what he did after the accident, giving Thomas the idea that life after death might exist. Hence, Will blames himself for all the deaths that have been occurring. After the conversation, Will goes outside to cool his mind, but just then he sees Isla on the beach nearby. She seems to be packing her bags with weights and goes into the sea. Will realizes that she is about to commit suicide and run to save her. He goes into the water and manages to get her out, but Isla is furious at having to change her plans. He takes her to the mansion and asks Toby to take her in since they help people who are suicidal. Although he is not happy with it, Toby states that she will have to go through the questionnaire first. Isla is surprised to discover Thomas is Will's father. Thomas then conducts an interview with Isla, asking her questions about her life and her strengths and weaknesses, her emotions, and what she thinks about consciousness and about missing someone after a loss. Meanwhile, Will goes around the house and sees that it has been fully converted into an establishment with canteens and rooms for every patient. Toby goes to what is now Will's room, and informs him that Isla has been approved for staying and tells him that tonight they are going to reveal it and that he is invited to a gathering. At night, everyone gathers in a room while Thomas presents something to them. At the meeting, Will tells Isla about her mother's death, and how it was his father's fault. He brings out a man with a device attached to his head and claims he has figured out a way to see the afterlife. Until now, the world had only known that our brainwaves went somewhere after we died. But now he has figured out a way to see where the brain wavelengths go well and the others are shocked. Thomas explains that with the device, they can see a video recording of the afterlife. Later, everyone is at Thomas's office. He wants to be the first one to be experimented upon, but he has to be dead for that to happen, which makes everyone worry and to stop from doing it. Thus, they decided to perform it on an already dead person. Isla states that she knew where to take one from, which they would have to steal from the morgue. On their way there, Toby reveals to Isla that their mother committed suicide, and Will blames his father. But Toby assures us it wasn't because of the discovery because it was a couple of years back. At the morgue, Toby distracts the keeper, allowing Will and Isla to successfully steal the corpse of a man named Phillips. Claiming that she hates the room Toby gave her, she will sleep in his room. They sleep on a bunk bed together. While asked, Will tells her that his mother killed herself on the day of their wedding anniversary. His father was never attentive and her mother was left hopeless when Thomas didn't come out of his office on their anniversary. The next day, everyone is ready to perform the experiment. They attach the corpse's head to the device and hit a button. While Thomas waits for something to show on the monitor, nothing happens. They do it repeatedly but to no avail. A disappointed Thomas leaves the room and everyone else follows. However, when Will enters the room with no one in it, the monitor starts working and shows a clip of Philip meeting a woman at a hospital, where she asks if she is going to see him or if he will keep running away. Will quickly turns it off before Thomas comes in again. They have to return Philip's body for cremation. Thomas, desperate, asks Toby for a new corpse. Will and Isla take the corpse back to the morgue, and when asked by Isla about the first thing that comes to his mind, he tells her that she wouldn't like her to kill herself and that she is beautiful. In the morgue, they leave it in the parking lot. All of a sudden, Isla kisses Will, but they quickly stop as the moment gets awkward. Later, Will cannot stop thinking and watching the video, which he has downloaded to his laptop. After some research on the internet, he finds the hospital that appears on the video. Will drives to the hospital and asks about patients with the name Phillips. A nurse informs him that he has 22 patients with the name Phillips, but she doesn't let him see the list. Will searches for the passage Philip walked through in the video, but as he reads it, he realizes it is not the same. A janitor informs him that there used to be a passage before the hospital was renovated a decade ago, so it is concluded that the video is not from the future. The following day, when everyone gathers at the mansion for a session, Thomas informs them that there is a lot of loose talk going on, and he calls a patient named Lacey to the stage. Lacey, who has been speaking out in opposition to the discovery and Thomas's new invention, claiming that it is ineffective, is exposed by Thomas. Thomas confronts her in the presence of the entire audience. Lacey is enraged that Thomas invited Isla to participate in the experiment when she had only just arrived, claiming that this is unfair because there are people living on the mansion who have more time than she does, and he did not extend the invitation to them. Finally, he asks her to pack her belongings and leave the establishment while she is still crying, and she does so. Will is enraged at Thomas for embarrassing Lacey, but Thomas dismisses the issue and shifts the conversation to another topic. Thomas tells him about how he came to the conclusion that Will's decision to stop supporting the discovery was due to his mother's influence. Will, enraged, responds by saying that Thomas simply wants to pretend that his mother's suicide did not occur, but that does not imply that he wishes to forget about it as well. Later on, Will plays a video of Isla Phillips. Will states that it is not possible to be the afterlife because it was the location from the past, and he concludes that the machine records the memory. They entered the hospital to investigate the case and found the file of the original Phillips. After seeing the file, they believe that in the video, Phillips was visiting his father on his deathbed and the woman he met was probably a relative. Later that night, Will has a chat with Toby, who tells him that Thomas has been working on this machine because of his mother. Thomas is guilt-ridden because of his wife's death and wants to know she went to a better place. Isla later, while analyzing the video, watches a tattoo on Philip's hand, but she remembers that the tattoo she had when they took him was different. They then focus on the woman who appears in the video and try to track her down. The following day, Will and Isla go to the beach. Will shares with her that this beach was the place he saw on his head when he had the accident and tells her that when he saved her from killing herself, he was at the beach because the beach made him feel better since he was a kid. Next, Isla confesses that her 5-year-old son died by drowning at a beach because she fell asleep just for a second. That was the reason she wanted to die before Will saved her. The two then go to Phillips's house to meet his sister, who happens to be the woman from the video. She informs them that Phillips never came to meet her father at the hospital. He only called them saying that he would, but he never did. None of his family likes him as he has been awful to them. Will has noticed a tattoo of a lighthouse on Phillips's arm in the video, but the woman tells him that he had a wave as a tattoo, just as hers. They did the tattoo together at 18, when they were close to each other. Will then realizes the video is not Philip's memory but rather his afterlife, where Phillips has gone back in time to correct his mistakes in life after his death. As it turns out, in the afterlife, people relive an alternate version of their lives and get a second chance to make different choices. Will and Isla are surprised by the discovery. They are in their room when suddenly Toby barges in and calls them to see Thomas. Thomas has attached himself to the device to try to figure out the machine. He has suffocated himself and is on the verge of death. The monitor started working again. This time it shows Thomas on the night of his wife's death, where it was their anniversary. He had not come out of his office that day, but in the video he tells his wife that work can wait and has dinner with her. He had been given a chance to correct his mistake, which he did. They immediately unplug the machine and revive Thomas by electrocuting him with a defibrillator as soon as they finish watching the video. Thomas is both surprised and delighted to discover that his device has worked. He eventually discovers that when a person dies, he or she is transported back to a time in their life that they regret the most and given a second chance to make different decisions. As a result, Thomas realizes that the afterlife is not a different plane of existence, but rather a different plane of this existence, and that people would not simply have to accept their greatest regret if they died. They would have the ability to alter it in the afterlife. If this information were to become public, the suicide rate would skyrocket to unprecedented heights. Thomas declares that they must demolish the machine in order to prevent more suicides from happening. He gathers everyone in the house in the front yard and is about to tell them about the invention when suddenly a gunshot is heard. Lacey, who has been kicked out of the mansion, has shot Isla. She claims that she didn't kill her, just relocated her before being taken away by Toby. Isla falls to the ground and tells herself that she doesn't want to die anymore. Will is devastated when she takes her last breath in his arms. Thomas decides to destroy the machine after seeing the impact it has on people. But when Thomas tries going inside his lab, he discovers that it is locked from the inside. Will locks himself in and attaches himself to the device. He suffocates himself, and when he is on the verge of death, he will find himself in a memory of himself back on the ferry. Will meets Isla again and asks her what is going on. I love how she reveals that this is a memory because Will is connected to the machine and is not dead. Isla in the memory, he finds his own subconscious. Isla reveals that he has been living this part in multiple lives and loops. The two first met on the same ferry many years ago. But in that scenario, Will didn't see Isla trying to commit suicide and couldn't save her. When he read about her death the following day, he was filled with guilt because he knew he could have done something on the ferry. He went on living his life, but the guilt always remained with him. Will has met her numerous times, so a part of his consciousness remembers her. Isla informs him that, because he was able to prevent her from committing suicide in this life, he has made peace with his consciousness and no longer harbors any regrets about his actions. Will promises that in his next life, he will remember her just as the voices of Thomas and Toby begin to be heard in his head. They are attempting to restart his heart, but their efforts are in vain, and Will dies as a result. After he dies, his afterlife transports him to a beach, where he sees a young boy alone in the water, enjoying himself in the sun. He rescues him from the water, making certain that the child does not drown. Isla rushes over to them, her face contorted with concern. He is Oliver, Isla's son, and Will has been sent out to save him from certain death. Isla expresses gratitude to him and walks away with her son. As Will walks away, neither of them is able to recognize the other. But then he turns around and has a confused expression on his face, which suggests that he is beginning to remember. Subscribe to this channel if you want more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to turn on notification to help this channel.